understand the concept of love.
Hello everyone, Fightsoul here with the third video in this series of character introductions, talking about Goenitz. New Goenitz is perhaps the best way to see how power creep affects this game. Not in the sense that most people think, because most people think when we talk power creep it's just like numbers and skills, like the amount of skills they have and such, but in his case, as we will see in a minute, it's more that the amount of stuff he has that a DPS would never have before, right? It's pretty interesting. So anyway, let's get into it. DPS, aptitude 15, he's a bear, he also gains extra rage, he's a bear, tiger, snake basically. He gets extra rage on attack, extra rage when a fighter dies, because he needs 3 souls. Gale badge, this is superpower tome. Fates, his are a little bit more expensive than the rest of the of the other members of the 4 kings. As you can see, he's got a lot of 15s in there. 4 15s here, 3 here, 2 here, including himself, that is obviously. His gate partners at least are easy. The new face version of Krishishiro Shermi. And now let's get into the meat of his character. So we start with his passive, which increases his own crit rate and pierce rate by 40%, which is great. It's always good when you have one that increases your crit or your damage as a DPS. On top of that, it increases his own attack, his defense, his crit power by 40%, and his ult damage by 30%. So basically he increases everything that does damage. For every Orochi Blood fighter on our side, he gets 15% chance of doing small skill, which is nice. It's not a huge buff, but any kind of synergy nowadays is nice. And at the beginning of his own turn, he has a 50% chance of displaying his own negative states and boosting his attack by 30%. The chance increases by 15% for every controlled fighter on your side. Increases by 20% for each fighter on your controlled side if he himself is controlled. The attack buff expires at the beginning of the enemy's next turn. At the start of the fight, he has 2 Undyings. If he doesn't use these, they get lost, basically. So he has 2 wildest 6 fighters, and then as you get less fighters on the enemy side, the less times you get. When he is hit and is below 40%, he escapes, like Goenitz did, and returns in his next turn, restoring 50% of his health and 500 rage, and boosting 40% crit power for a turn, and permanently boosting 15 crit resist and small skill resist. Stacks 3 times, lasts through resurrection, and activate it twice. Can revive once, restoring full rage and HP and resetting the number of escapes. So before we even get to the next part, by the time we're here, Goenitz at the start of the fight has 2 Undyings, 2 escapes, 1 revive, and another 2 escapes after that revive. This is a DPS, right? And he basically has 3 Undyings and 4 escapes per fight. It's fucking ridiculous for a DPS. And then on top of all that, because apparently he didn't have enough utility or whatever, they decided to give him Chang's turn end defense, a transformation of attack and defense. The first time he triggers his wind escape after his debut, like from round 2 onwards, basically, in arena. When he escapes, he triggers the turn end effect. He gives up to 3 people 800 rage and dispels the negative status, and it can only be activated once per battle. And it doesn't say it here, but I'm pretty sure it's stated that once per battle means overall, like you can't have Chang come in from striker and activate his own one. I think that was mentioned somewhere, but I can't remember where it was, maybe in the Chinese version of the text or something. So yeah, this dude is hella tanky for a DPS, because he can survive forever. He heals himself every time he escapes. He boosts all his stats. It's nuts. Like, how is this a DPS? Right? Like, escapes were always DPS things, fine. But on top of escapes, he has 2 Undyings and a revive? That's a bit much, right? Okay, let's move on. Let's see what else he has. So, his skill. attacks a single enemy, increases the damage of his own skill by 20%, causes damage equal to 50% of the skill damage to the target row, and for every Orochi Blood fighter you have in the field, increases the ratio up by 10%. So for people running the 4 kings, it's going to be doing what, 80%? No, I think it counts in, so 90% extra, which is pretty nice. Plus if you got like one of the secretaries or something like that as strikers, I think they count, that would be 100%. Absorbs 300 rage from a random person in the row of the target is located. Okay, this is all pretty standard, but then, you know, he gets some defensive support, because apparently he needs that. Apply a wind shield to the fighter to all the fighters in his row, so if you have him backline, all the backline is going to have a shield. Not a real shield, it's kind of like Chris's, right? This is not going to absorb healing or reflect or whatever. So what does it do? It gives them 20% extra res, which stacks with other buffs of the same type. Heals 10% max HP to that fighter when the shield is hit, and what the shield breaks after getting hit 1 to 4 times, just like Chris one did. And the more enemies in the field, the higher the number of times. Can't be dispelled, lasts for 1 round. When it breaks, the amount of HP it restores in that hit doubles, so it's going to be 20% heal instead. That's for your entire backline, right? Why does a DPS have that much utility in his skill? And at the beginning of your next turn, consume any wind shields on the field, restore 150 rage to the holder of the shield, increase the res rate, heal rate and rage return gained from the wind shields by 60%. It's nuts! He has so much utility for a DPS. And then we move on to the piece of resistance, his Smax, which gets even better. So first of all, he attacks the enemy with the highest rage, increases his own damage by 35%, his res rate has life steal rate by 50%. For 1 round, all of his attacks ignore 90% defense. That's nuts, by the way. That completely nullifies Yashiro's 90% defense buff, and every tank basically is going to have no defense. So that's why stuff like Yashiro's damage limitation is good, right? 90% chance to sign as a target and prevent small skills for 2 rounds. That's a new thing that he gets, that nobody else gets. He basically mutes them and they can't use skills. So when someone like Hotaru would counter-attack this, instead of using his skill, she counter-attacks with a normal attack. It can be dispelled. It doesn't, you know, it's not undispellable, so at least she can cleanse it. But when it is dispelled, he immediately absorbs 250 rage from the target, ignoring control 3, which is really, really good, because it's going to really help Goenitz ult multiple times. Deals extra damage up to 100% based on the target's current rage, and since he attacks the highest rage target, that's going to be close to the top pretty often. Dispels the target's buffs, reduces the targets and the surrounding enemies' block power and crit power by 25%, ignoring control 3, and it can't be dispelled. Dispels the negative status of 3 random people on her side. This doesn't give priority to controlled allies. When they say it gives priority to controlled allies, they mean people who have like disabling CC, such as stun, paralyze, etc. But because he's cleansing 3 different people, he's doing half your team, so he's going to hit people who are controlled most of the time. Not only that, it's also going to be cleansing people who have things like burns, which normally get ignored by these skills, and burns in the future do a lot of damage, so this is really, really good. Recovers 200 rage for an ally without full rage, and immediately gains 1 stack of Breath of the Wind God. If the damage caused by this ult is less than 40% of the target's max HP, or if it's the first ult after resurrecting or being deployed, gains 2 stacks of the Breath of the Wind God. If you have 3 stacks at the same time, then you can gain full rage immediately, switch your ult to Eternal Tempest, uses up all the stacks, and attacks the enemy's column with the highest rage, doing 100% extra damage to the main target, and splash damage to the adjacent column. So if it hits the middle column, it's doing splash damage to all the columns. This splash damage doesn't return rage, this ult doesn't dispel negative states of your allies, unlike the other one, and doesn't gain Breath of the Wind God stacks, but retains all other effects of the original ult. So, his Smax is so nuts. It's like, I want to say it's like the best Smax in the game. Like, not in terms of power, but in terms of how much he gets out of it, right? It's absolutely insane how good his Smax is. Like, if you just look at the beginning of it, right? They ignores 90% defense. That's a throwback to Goenitz. And you just don't see that in Arena anymore. He's like the only person that has that. Absorbs 200 raids, that's okay. The silence making people not being able to use skills. If they don't have an instant cleanse, that's really good. And if they do cleanse it, he absorbs 250 raids, and that's really good. He does a ton of damage. He dispels debuffs for like basically half your party on each ult. He reduces enemy block power and crit power. He recovers raids for an ally on our side, and he does that with both versions of his ults. So basically he has damage, he has utility and cleansing on his ult. It's nuts, right? It's like if you showed me this kit before I ever saw this character, I wouldn't believe you if you told me he was a DPS. It makes no sense. DPS don't have this kind of stuff. Not at this kind of level, right? They don't give them healing and rage regeneration and damage mitigation for your party and turn end effects and all these things. These are normally things that when they do it, they give it to ganks, because ganks generally have worse stats than DPS, right? Because they're a little bit jack of all trades, master of none. But it's really weird when they give all this stuff to a DPS. He is generally like when you see people talking about all the big DPSs, he's one of the one that goes a little bit under the radar. It's not like he's bad or anything, or people say he's bad, but he's rarely talked about as much. Like when you compare it to like Chris, for example, who everybody was talking about and everybody was putting videos up and talking about his numbers. And it's crazy to me because he has just so much utility apart from his damage. Like obviously he doesn't do as much damage as Chris, because Chris is just made to do pure damage. But he does so many things, and he does them so well that it's insane. Like for me, this man probably has the best overall kit of any DPS in the game, including the ones coming later. Like because he just covers every base. Like when you take Chang out, you have Goenitz, so he covers a turn end. You need to defend your back line. He gives him 20% res. He gives him heal every time to get hit. Right? Then he gives rage. He cleanses the CC and the debuffs that you get. It's like no matter where you want to put him in, this man is going to do a job. He's amazing. In terms of runes, I personally think once he's Smax, it's walls easy because of his splash damage. His base ult does some damage as well to whatchamacallit. He does extra. His skill does damage in area, and when he does his S-Max, he does damage up to 6 people, but at least 4 people normally. So walls just fits perfectly with that. More importantly, his passive gives him crit and pierce rate, so he doesn't really need killing runes because he doesn't need more crit. Because he's got 40% at level 1, it's going to be something like 60% at level 100. So he's already going to have a ton of crit. You can run killing on him if you don't have a good set of walls on him, but obviously, ideally, you'd have walls on him and you just let him go off and do massive damage. In terms of chips, in a similar situation to Chris, he works well with Scorpion, so that he can heal back up from Reflect, so they have something to offset that. He also works well with Python. I think Scorpion might be the best fit for him, so he can get that HP drain, even though he already has some. But there's going to be so many people with so much Reflect, right, in the future, that if you can get incidental lifesteal rate without sacrificing any major stats, that's a big win. So yeah, I'm probably going to run him on Scorpion. Probably pair him with Chris actually on my Scorpion set is my mindset. Pythons are also fantastic. Obviously, slugs. You don't want healing chips from DPS whenever you can avoid it. In terms of Fightsoul, this is a harder one. He can use many Fightsouls. I think, like, if you can defend him, similar to what I said to Chris, Storm is best on him because he can get extra Wind God stacks, right, helping him get his extra ult more often. As well as the fact that, unlike Chris, he can survive a lot more Yeah, because he has those 2 Undyings at the beginning of the fight, plus he has the 2 escapes, plus he has a revive. Now, my main issue with that is I've seen Reflect triggering escapes before, and if he triggers escape in between ults, he won't do that second Storm ult, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Obviously, Unyielding works really good with him. War God works really good with him, although he doesn't need the extra crit, but the level 5 stat bonuses and stuff like that is really, really good. You can run Wolf on him, like I said, you can do that on most DPS. Although I don't think he personally makes the best use of it. I don't think he needs it. I'd probably run Unyielding as him, just like off the top of my head if I had to choose one. I'd probably go Unyielding. If you see that you can use Storm without too much of a threat to losing ults and stuff like that, you'd have to watch a few matches with him with Storm equipped. Then Storm obviously is going to be amazing, but it depends how it works out in the actual match, yeah? So, and Wargord is just generic good DPS Fightsoul, so there's never an issue with that one. Okay, so this dude is an easy A rank, right? He basically does everything. He has damage, he has utility, he has defense for your team, he has healing, he has everything you can want from a character. This man is going to give it to you. If you had to pick like a guaranteed spot for your backline out of all the DPSs that are coming, etc., I'd make Goenitz one of them over anybody else, simply because he's going to fulfill so many roles in your team, right? So in my head, like I said, speaking to Discord, when it comes to picking my backline, it's Goenitz 100% plus whoever. In this case, like in the end game, where we are now with what's been released in China, my backline is probably going to be Goenitz, Yuri, and Diamond, for example. But Goenitz is going to be there no matter what, and it's probably going to take a while to retire him because he can do so many things. Yeah, easy A rank. Put him in your team if you can afford him. He is amazing. He is going to do a ton of work. Build him up, make him your carry, make him your healer, make him everything, and enjoy this man, because I don't think we're going to get many characters like him anytime soon, seeing that nobody else released after him has the sheer breadth of skills and effects that he has. Now moving on a little bit, let's move on onto the quick recap. Okay, so quick recap. Goenitz, DPS, aptitude 15, Gale badge, superpower tome, pretty expensive fates but cheap partners, which is great. His passive increases basically all the offensive stats and a little bit of defensive. Increases his own skill chance, cleanses his own debuffs. He has a higher chance to do so if you're already debuffed. He has up to 2 Undyings at the beginning of the fight when there's 6 enemies in the field. As time goes on, those go down and get wasted if they're not used, so that's something to keep in mind. He has 2 escapes when he's below 40% HP, like Goenitz had, and he heals himself 50% of his max HP and 500 rage when he comes back. He increases his own crit power and boosts his crit resistance, more crit resist when he does this. Can stack it 3 times, lasts through resurrection. He can revive once. When he does revive, he comes back with full rage and full HP, and he resets his number of escapes. And when he escapes for the first time after round 1, so basically round 2 onwards, just like Chang, he has Chang's turn end passive, where he gives rage to people, ends the turn, and cleanses their debuffs. His skill increases the damage of his own skill. He does additional damage to the target row, and for every Orochi blood fighter you have, he gets an extra 10% damage. He absorbs 300 rage from a random person in the row where the target is located. He puts a windshield, like not a real shield, just like an effect to all the fighters in his row. So in this case, the back line increases 20% res, which can be stacked. They get healed 10% every time they get hit. They can get hit up to 1 to 4 times before it breaks. The more enemies in the field, the longer it takes to break. It can't be dispelled, it lasts for a round. When the shield breaks, the amount of HP that they get healed is doubled, so 20%. And at the beginning of your next turn, you absorb back all the shields, restore 150 rage to the holders, increase the rest rate, heal rate, and rage return gained from the windshields by 60%. His Smax. So he attacks enemies with the highest rage, he increases his own damage, his own res, his own lifesteal, he ignores 90% defense for a round after doing it, he absorbs 300 rage, he has 90% chance to silence a target and prevent them from using their skills. If they do dispel it, he absorbs 250 rage from them. He does extra damage based on the target's current rage, he dispels the target's buffs, he reduces the target and the surrounding enemies' block power and crit power by 25%, ignores control 3 and cannot be dispelled. Dispels the negative status of 3 random people on the side, recovers 200 rage from an ally without full rage, and immediately he gains 1 stack of the Breath of the Wind God. If he does less than 40% damage, or it's the first round since he resurrected, or he's entered the battle, he'll gain 2 stacks instead, and those two, and with 3 stacks, he will ult again. He will do damage. He will do splash damage to the column next to the one he's targeting, so it can be like all the full team if he hits the middle column. The splash damage doesn't return rage. This ult does not cleanse the negative states of your allies and does not gain Breath of the Wind God stacks, but retains all other effects from the original ult. So this man is a monster. It's pretty simple. He does everything. His best runes, I would say, are Wolves, followed by Killing. You can run Killing if you don't have a good set of Wolves, but Wolves is obviously better. In terms of chips, I personally think Python fits the best with him. Try and give him as much HP drain as possible so he can deal well with all those reflect characters. If not, Python obviously work as well, but Scorpion I think is the best. In terms of fight souls, I'd say Unyielding is probably best for him, but he is I'm not 100% sure on that one. It's just like the generic good DPS fight soul because it covers everything. And War God obviously works well on him as well, if not Wolf, but Wolf I don't think he's the best DPS to take advantage of it, so probably Unyielding as my main choice for him. If you can make sure he can run Storm and he's not going to escape due to reflect damage and he's not going to get killed too soon, then obviously Storm is the best choice for any DPS. He is tank hit increase, so he can use it better. That's something to keep in mind. He's an easy A rank. He has all the utility in the world for a DPS. He has defensive stuff for your team as a DPS, and he has a lot of damage. He should be your one guaranteed back row character because he can cover all kinds of positions and do all kinds of things that other DPS can't, and you can use your other 2 back row slots to just focus on damage or whatever. Easy pickup, easy A tier, easy A rank. Just get this man. What are you doing? I know he has no neck, but other than that he's great. And hopefully this will help you, and I'll see you guys in the next one.